Wow, look at that hair. Today I want to share with you something that Congress is proposing because there's a few ideas out on the floor that look and sound very similar to a concept called UBI. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it stands for UBI. No, it means Universal Basic Income. Now, the CARES Act has given people a one-time cash payment of up to $1,200, but a lot of people are still waiting for their stimulus checks, with most agreeing that it's simply not enough money to keep their life going. So in order to continue stimulating, Congress will be voting today once more on another bill that proposes an additional $300 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, an additional $75 billion for hospitals, an additional $50 billion for the EIDL, another $25 billion for testing kits, for a grand total of $450 billion additional money. So it looks like this one will be passed, and the idea of UBI, or Universal Basic Income, is not that far-fetched. I'm really sorry about that. Believe it or not, the Pope himself, Pope Francis, has even called for universal basic income. In fact, right now, there's a few plans to add to a potentially phase 4 of the stimulus package plan, and one of them involves forgiving all rent and mortgage payments. Yeah, don't even worry about paying your mortgage or your rent. We got this. And on the other side of the spectrum is another plan that's proposed to cover up to $100,000 of payroll per year to the companies that laid people off. The whole stimulus narrative is bringing us closer and closer to what seems like the inevitable solution, where every American is going to be entitled to a basic standard form of income regardless of whether or not they have a job. And this is sort of like the ultimate form of cash flow in the form of passive income straight from the government. And you know how YouTube is riddled with all these funny videos about how people make money from home? Yeah, I would never stoop to that level. So I realize this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people, so I'm going to try to take the politics out of this one and just focus on the facts. I want to answer the question if we're finally going to get some form of universal basic income, and if we are, what would it look like and what would be the pros and cons? Can you imagine what Andrew Yang must be feeling like right now?
Freedom dividends.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrei Jikh. Hope you had a great weekend. And that was obviously not Andrew Yang. Looked like him though. No, I'm kidding. That was my roommate Angelo. I want to keep this as fun and as lighthearted as possible. I want to stay neutral throughout this video and just give you the facts about this current situation that we're in, because I'm simply too busy to have any political opinion about this. I'm still trying to figure out if Carol Baskin did it or not. I think she did. But it seems like universal basic income is once again at the forefront of everyone's conversations. But before we talk about it, let's just pretend like we don't already have an opinion about this until we watch this video all the way through till the end. And this whole idea was just recently popularized and thrown into the spotlight because of Andrew Yang, when he announced the Freedom Dividend and started running as a Democratic candidate for president. And here's what started it all: $1,000 per month of a Freedom Dividend given to every single American, tax-free. That's $12,000 per year, which is just above the basic income poverty line, which is just enough to cover all of your basic livelihood expenses. So was Andrew Yang right all along? Fun Snapple fact of the day: if everyone got access to universal basic income here in the States, ages 18 and up, every year, $12,000 per year or $1,000 per month, it would cost the US government roughly $3 trillion per year. I have no idea why I just looked up like I was calculating it. I knew the answer, but $3 trillion. That's a lot. That's around 3/4, or roughly 75% of what the entire US government spent in 2019, which was $4.4 trillion. And even if we exclude people ages 65 years and older because they're already collecting Social Security income, that would only reduce the cost by about a fifth, which isn't that much. So in order to fund this program without actually cutting out any other programs, we would have to nearly double the federal revenue. And there's just no way of doing that without substantially increasing our taxes or cutting out or reducing the expenses of other social programs or just restructuring the entire welfare system as a whole. In comparison, the whole CARES relief package that our government passed has totaled $1.76 trillion in cost, not actually $2.2 trillion. And the first plan of what looks to be like universal income is the $2,000 per month proposal that's being called the Emergency Money for the People's Act. To recap, people who are ages 16 years or older who are earning less than a whopping $130,000 per year would be eligible to receive this $2,000 a month stimuli. But this also includes people who were left out of the CARES Act, and this includes people who were claimed as dependents, college students, high school students, and even people with disabilities who were not able to receive their checks at all. But unlike universal income as we know it, which is indefinite, this proposal would only last 6 months. The second proposal is called the rent and mortgage payments through the Corona illness emergency. I might have slightly modified the name, but if approved, it calls for a total cancellation of all rent and mortgage payments for up to 1 year. It includes full rent or mortgage forgiveness on your primary residence for both homeowners and renters alike. It's also not going to add up or accumulate your debt, and it's going to forgive all of it, and it's not going to negatively affect your credit rating or your rental history. And it would establish a fund for landlords to cover any losses. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Yeah, but like, who's paying for it though? The only pretty much limitation to doing this is that you have to pick one place of your primary residence. In other words, you can't be someone like Meet Kevin or Graham Stephan where you're a real estate investor and do this for all of your properties. You have to pick just one. So in other words, mortals like me who actually don't own a house or only own one house or just rent. So people like me. Of course, all of this sounds too good to be true. When I read the bill, I couldn't find how they're supposed to be funding this. But on the bottom of the page, I'll summarize, it says, after establishing this fund, Congress shall appropriate these funds yearly to maintain and upkeep it. So who's paying for all this? So that's where we are right now, and I can see the discourse or the conversation of the internet slowly shifting from where we are right now to a conversation about universal basic income. And when it's here, you gotta be prepared to make your case whether you're for or against the idea of universal basic income. So here are some pros and cons, some reasons for why you may wanna be for or against the idea of universal basic income, starting with the pros or the reasons for UBI. Number one, it improves the welfare of the poor, which is key to a healthy society if you believe that a society is only as good as its poorest people. Everyone should be given care and access to basic life essentials. I feel like our founding fathers would argue that this is a basic human right, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of universal basic income. Because by now, after watching all these YouTube videos, we know that money equals happiness. Obviously, I'm kidding. Money does not make you happy, but it does make you alive. Number two, it gives the less skilled workforce of the economy a way to adjust to the leaps and the advances made in technology without being left behind. In other words, we can actually give people the valuable time to catch up and rejoin society as we give them some sort of a safety net that gives them the possibility to re-educate themselves and learn valuable skills so that they can rejoin society and therefore add a lot more value back to the economy. And number three, it gives people a way to create. Not out of necessity, but out of purpose. And that is something that I can personally relate with on a very deep level. Because when I quit my job, I barely had any kind of income coming in other than my dividends, which was just barely enough to keep me alive. And with that money and with that time, that bought me enough to try and take a risk to do something that was meaningful to me, which was start my YouTube channel to begin with. And that's gonna be important in just a minute. But when it comes to the cons of universal basic income, so that basically summarizes exactly what would happen if we let the government and the Federal Reserve solve this issue for us. Because by printing more money to support universal basic income, all you're gonna do is inflate stock prices through the roof as the rich start to become richer and the cost of goods and services is just gonna get higher and higher until you negate the whole point of having universal basic income to begin with, unless it's funded the right way. Ultimately, when it comes to universal basic income, we can't can't even agree as to what it even means. Because for someone like Andrei, he will argue for the universal basic income, which is only $1,000 per month. But for someone on the opposite side of the spectrum where he's at, would argue that we should completely subsidize our incomes from our jobs entirely and just be paid the average annual salary of roughly $50K per year instead of $12K per year. And then there's everything in between, like what's happening right now with all these government stimulus packages. So the first step we would have to take is come to some sort of an agreement, a consensus, as the adults like to say, a consortium of what it means to even have universal basic income. What does that mean? And secondly, we would have to find a way to properly fund these sorts of systems without compromising the entire growth of the economy itself. And thirdly, we'd have to find a way to test this across different parts of the world on people with different income levels just to see the psychological impacts that having universal basic income would even have. Believe it or not, this is already happening in Alaska and with the Indian tribe payments. But right now those payments are only a couple $1,000s per year, which isn't enough to conclusively say one way or the other what kind of an effect this would have on a grand scale. Would this make people lazier and not motivate them? That's not what we want. Or would it motivate people to continue to build better life for themselves, which is exactly what we want? Interestingly enough, and contrary to what you might think, basic income is actually really good at promoting the proper incentive. Studies of motivation show that jobs that reward people with money is a good motivator for what's called mechanistic work, but a bad motivator for creative work. Now, what this means is that when the machines take over their machine type of work, us humans will be left more with creative type of work that will require more problem solving. And creativity is more motivated not by money, but by having personal goals. And if you have some sort of basic income, it allows you to focus on meaningful work rather than meaningless work for the sake of money just to meet your basic needs, therefore allowing you to contribute more to society. Where's my mic? I'd totally drop one if I could. I know. But the argument against UBI is that we already have something like it, and that is our broken welfare system that people try to abuse and take advantage of. In other words, it's already here, it's just not working. However, our current system of welfare has so many obstacles and so many hoops to jump through, so much so that some people spend more time trying to focus on gaming the system rather than concentrating on being productive members of society. But if instead we had a universal basic income without a catch, then we would see a lot more productivity. And we could probably do something like $1,000 a month by restructuring the current welfare system and maybe cutting out some of the other social programs we don't really need. And we can do all that without raising taxes on the rich and without substantially cutting military spending budgets. Believe it or not, there is a way to get this done in a way that doesn't take advantage of others for the benefit of someone else, in a way that we can all get along and actually get it done. So I'm for universal basic income only if we can implement it in a way that doesn't require more government spending, and if we give it to the less fortunate of society without calling for the of the Federal Reserve. And if we exceed $1,000 per month in income, then I would only say to implement it as a temporary solution like we're thinking of doing right now. And if you've been following my work, I've been trying to do this with my dividend stock portfolio by owning stocks that pay me dividends every single month. And right now I'm up to $600 a month, so a little over halfway, which will be very useful to get to $1,000 a month as my stocks go to zero in this crazy stock market. And I'm kind of a good case study of universal basic income, except I generated that income through my dividends. And once I had just barely enough, I quit my job, and for the first time in my life, I quit working for the sake of money and I tried to do something more meaningful. And for once in my life, that path here on YouTube literally paid off. Like Casey Neistat once said, human beings have two sets of problems, and the most important thing to conquer first is the money problem. And these are things that can be solved immediately by throwing more money at the issue. Like, how are you gonna eat? How are you gonna pay for rent? How are you gonna take care of your kids? And by giving people that money, those problems go away immediately. But once those problems are solved, human beings have a second set of problems, which is shared amongst the world, amongst both rich and poor alike. Those problems are purpose, meaning, finding love, fulfillment, and legacy. And these problems can't be simply solved by throwing more money at these issues. But when you're struggling to find where you're gonna eat and how you're gonna pay for that this month, then the least of your concerns will be those second-tier problems, and you will never get ahead in life. But my question is, I'd love to hear from you. Why do you think this would be a good idea, or why do you think this would be a bad idea? Don't just tell me
socialism.
I really want to hear a well thought out opinion. If you've not received your stimulus check just yet, head on over to the IRS part of the website where you can click Get My Payment Info, submit your direct deposits, and you can track what's going on with your payment, whether you'll receive it digitally or physically or otherwise. And I do want to reiterate, this video is not about being political. I have no political points of views. I'm just here to give you the facts, and the rest is up to you, and only you can make your own opinion about it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. But you know what we can agree on? We can agree on your 2 free stocks from Webull. So go ahead, create an account with them, fund it $100, get 2 free stocks, one of which can be valued up to $1,400. Get your other free stock from Robinhood, and that's your free money. Follow me on Instagram. Enjoy the rest of your week. I've been your host. My name's Exhibit. Go get your free money while you wait on your other free money, so your money can money while you money. Love you all. I'll see you all on Monday and Friday. Bye-bye.